Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have Chief of Police from just outside Dallas, Fort Worth, JT. He's going to talk to us about his experience with burnout, working all the way through up to Chief over the last 18 years. As usual, as I say with all these episodes, take one thing away. Take one thing away, take action on it, and you'll start to make a difference in your life. As usual, episodes are sponsored by Create From Y, and currently we are running a motorcycle retreat in May next year to teach all of our learnings off the back of motorcycles through the southwest of the US, which would be kind of cool. So if you're interested in that, just hit us up and drop us an email. It's down in the description below. But without further ado, JT, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got into policing, and then briefly just kind of over your career up to where you are now.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I started out with a dream of getting into law enforcement, like a lot of people do. It started in high school with my school resource officer, just someone who set a really good example and was a really positive reflection on the policing profession. And so, when you get to that crossroads at the end of high school and you wonder, like, what am I going to do when I grow up? That was kind of the only logical thing I could see for myself. So out of high school, I declared my major as criminal justice in college. But unfortunately, I didn't buy the books or anything. And so I didn't do very well at first, which led me to the military.
Yeah.
Served in the Navy for 5 years as a military policeman. And that was really what I needed to get my focus in life. It was through that experience, deployments, marriage, that I was able to focus in on what I really wanted to do, and that was to be a leader in the policing profession. So as soon as I got out, I started as a civilian police officer. Over the last 18 years, I've done a number of things. Worked in traffic as a drug recognition expert. Did 10 years in canine. Handled 3 dogs. One of them was killed in the line of duty. Worked all the way up through the sergeant rank as a canine handler. And then when I promoted to lieutenant, I had to step away from that and have been in, leadership positions ever since. I became a chief on September 11th of 2019, just prior to the start of COVID. So my first 3 years as a police chief has been an absolute trial by fire. Every type of adversity that you can imagine, or that I could have imagined as a police chief, I have experienced in the last 3 years. And it hasn't deterred me one bit. I think that this is still one of the greatest professions on the face of the planet. And I'm living the dream every day. And I'm so thankful that I get to do this.
That's amazing, man. And thanks for sharing that. Yeah, no, yeah, when you find that passion, it's just there's nothing like it. I always say this, policing. I did 7.5 years, and ultimately, a lot of people know my story that I burned out, but from PTSD and just hit rock bottom. But I always say this: it's the best job in the world, but it can also be the hardest job in the world.
Of course. Yeah, no doubt.
I want to rewind real quick. So you did canine for a while. How was that? How was doing canine for so long, and really obviously getting specialized in it? What do you think the benefits of that has brought to where you are now?
I owe a lot of my career and a lot of the lessons that I've learned, and owe a lot about the leader that I am today to my time in canine. I also learned a lot about burnout in canine as well. But really, that was my first taste at a specialty outside of traffic.
Mhm.
And, being a DRE and working traffic is pretty black and white. Crashes happen a certain way, violations happen a certain way. And, you can really get into a routine when you're dealing with those things. But when you start handling a dog, everything changes. Nothing is the same. Every situation you go to is completely different. And, I had the pleasure of being around a lot of really great leaders in canine, and I was around some of the absolute worst leaders when I was in K9. And you know as well as anybody that you're shaped by good and bad. So I learned a lot about what I wanted to do when I moved up into leadership. And then I also made many notes about things that I would never do as a leader because I remembered what that felt like. But it was by far the most rewarding time of my career. I had the most fun, got to do a lot of really incredible things. I hope those things made an impact in our world, in our profession, in the canine field. So it was a sad day when I had to walk away. But if you were to be in my office right now, you would see a wall over here of pictures of dogs and awards. And I've got my original leash right over here. So it is very much a part of who I am. I have a Belgian Malinois at home as a pet for our family, and she's the absolute greatest. So I live and breathe everything canine.
No, I love it. I love it. That's yeah, it's so true. Like I've worked alongside working when I was on the street, obviously would be with the canine guys, got to chase people and be behind them. Had a big German Shepherd, literally just had bit somebody, turned around, came up the hill and was straight at me. And I can tell you this, I almost needed to change my undies that day because
Sure.
it's a scary thing. But yeah, so doing it for 10 years, that's amazing. I love the fact that what you said there though is that you had some great leaders and you had some horrible leaders. I wanted to highlight the fact that you identified what you liked in the good leaders and what you didn't like in the leaders as well, and didn't and decided, wrote down what I don't want to be when I'm a leader. Um, did you just come up with that, or did somebody say that give you that idea to do that, or was it just something that you just naturally did?
I think somewhere along the way in my leadership journey, one of the great leaders that crossed my path, who it was, I couldn't tell you, but somewhere along the way, somebody had to have told me that it doesn't matter if the situation that you're in is good or bad. It doesn't matter if the leader that is over you is good or bad. There's something to learn there. And I think that I've carried that with me throughout. So even in some really awful, ugly situations, there's something to take away that's positive that you can tuck back and say, hey, if I ever have an opportunity, I'm going to do for someone what this person did for me or said to me. And then conversely, I remember what it feels like when somebody treats you poorly, or when somebody doesn't fight for you when they should. And I will never do that for somebody. I will always fight for my people because I will remember this moment where I felt, awful and betrayed and alone. And I don't want anybody to ever feel that way who works for me. So I can't pin it to one particular person, but somewhere along the way, I was enlightened, and I'm sure thankful for that.
That's awesome that you carry that along, and I'm sure we'll get to it around how you kind of transfer that to the officers that look up to you at this stage. Uh, Tell me a little bit. You said you experienced burnout during those canine years, and I'm focusing on the canine years because it was a big portion of it. And it sounds like you're extremely passionate about the canine side of stuff. And when we're passionate about something, what I've found is you can actually burn out even harder in it because you're so passionate about it.
Of
You see it
course.
in a lot of new cops. Their first couple years, they just throw everything into it and start to burn out. What were some of those experiences, and what were some of the learnings that you learned from those states of burnout during the canine years?
Yeah. So just like you said, jumping into that as my first specialty as a police officer. And, let's be honest, being a canine handler is a dream for a lot of cops.
Mm.
And so there I was in a dream come true, handling a dog. And this is what I'll say. And I don't want to play the blame game here, but when I was selected to move into canine, I was working in a small department at the time, and there was no one to guide me, nobody to tell me what to expect, no one to tell me what healthy boundaries looked like as a dog handler. And so, as a high drive younger officer, I put all this pressure on myself. Nobody did it to me, I did it to myself. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the number one most dependable canine around. I wanted everybody to call me. I wanted them to trust me. I wanted my dog to be the best, to be the highest performer. And you only get that with a lot of work and training. So I put everything into my dog. I put everything into my work. And over time, I ended up running myself into the ground. But, it all started when I was a handler by myself. I was the only dog in the county, and it was 952 square miles. And so, I'm married, I have children, and now I'm the only canine available in this huge county, and I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I didn't create any boundary for myself, and neither did my agency. They just said, hey, if this is what you love and this is what you want to do, we're not going to stop you. And so I went and went and went and, almost ran myself into the ground. Now, fast forward a few years, I moved over to the sheriff's office, and they brought me there with the intent to create a canine unit from scratch. So we went from no dogs to 3 dogs, and that helped lighten the load. But as a young leader, what I found myself doing is taking that same pressure and really, really high expectations and projecting that onto the people who were in my unit. I'm a high performer. I'm high drive. I have a really successful dog because I invested a lot of time and energy into that partnership. And now as a leader, I expect you to do the same. And a lot of those expectations that I had for my troops were unreasonable. And thankfully, we had open dialogue. We were vulnerable with each other, and I was able to accept that feedback. I also had some good mentors in my life, my chief specifically, who would speak truth to me and just let me know that not everyone is like you. Not everyone is going to be like you, and it's not reasonable to expect that. What are your minimum standards that you want everybody to achieve? And that's what you have to hold them to. Quit doing all this, above and beyond. You can do that. But when you start placing that on other people, you put them at risk of things like burnout. And that was really the first time as a leader where I understood the weight of the responsibility that I have for the lives, the sanity, the quality of relationships for other people. So in that leadership position, it wasn't just about making sure the dogs performed, making sure the handlers were prepared and training. It was making sure that my expectations didn't erode their marriage, didn't take time away from them and their children, didn't, cause them so much stress that they weren't watching what they were eating, or, making them where they didn't want to work out or do any of these healthy things that help keep them regulated and, from burning out. I was trying to push everybody to the limit, demand high performance. And once I understood what it was that I was holding in my hands as a leader, everything changed. And I began to really focus on the health and wellness of the officer, the health and wellness of the dog, and that, there was extreme value in that downtime, in that decompression, in that inward focus on your own wellness.
No, that's absolutely amazing. How long did it take you to come to that realization? Because I know as cops we're A-type personality. It's I know a lot. So I've done this. I've succeeded at all these different things like you had. How long did it take you to come to that realization as leading your that whole new unit? How long was that process, would you say?
Well, when we decided we were going to create the unit, I developed a criteria that I wanted these new handlers to meet. A physical agility test, a written exam, an interview board in front of a bunch of other outside canine handlers, all this stuff. And the first clue should have been everybody who took the test failed it. So that should have been clue number one. Then on the PT test, we had only one person passed it, was able to complete it. And so I ended up making a selection because I didn't give myself an out. It wasn't like, if you don't meet the criteria, we're not going to pick you. I, I put myself in a bad position. So we had to make a selection. And then ultimately, the person that I selected washed out. And this is after we had paired the person with a dog. This is after we had sent them to 6, 8, 10 weeks worth of training and spent a ton of money getting this person ready. It wasn't until that person washed out that I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Why are these people not successful? Now, I do think that that person was not the right fit for the unit. However, I was also able to examine these really high expectations that I had. And that's when I was able to go, okay, this is probably a little too much here. You're pushing too hard. You're asking too much. Let's dial it back and look a little more holistically at this process.
Oh, I love that. I love that you were able to learn from that and not just go, no, it's everybody else's fault, because we see it a lot. I think we're seeing it a lot now with the leaders, and there's a lot of talk around it. That's what we see a lot, is that no, it's not my fault. It's yours. You didn't this is the criteria. You just didn't pass it. It's all your fault. So I love the fact that you recognize that realization, that you had that awareness to yourself. Anyways, what would you say is, what do you see when you think of burnout? In yourself or in others, what would you define that as?
I think for me, burnout is losing. I'm a high drive person. I have high expectations for myself. I'm very goal oriented. But for me, when I lose the desire to perform at a high level, I know I'm getting burnout. That naturally comes. You can tell I love this job. I'm passionate about this job. But when the weight of the job, or the decisions that we're having to make, or the external things that we're having to deal with, becomes so weighty, and that pressure becomes so much, when that desire begins to fade, that's how I know I'm moving in that direction, and I have to pivot and change.
Can you think of a specific, like, your top, like, time that's happened to you?
Yeah. So, I mentioned before that one of my dogs was killed in the line of duty. So I handled the dog, retired him, went to school, got a new dog. We did about 8 to 12 weeks in school, got out on the street, got certified, and we were on our first track. That was going to be my dog's first apprehension. We hadn't been on the street at home, but for a few weeks, and we're tracking the suspect. We come around some trees, and the bad guy had concealed himself underneath the tree. He'd completely covered his body in leaves, so you couldn't see him. Well, the dog could smell him. Dog went right to him. Suspect sat up and shot my dog twice. I'd just gotten the dog. This was his first, everything was going to culminate in a really successful deployment, and immediately everything changed. So, with that's a critical incident, officer involved shooting. We fired and the suspect was killed. So you're dealing with your partner being killed. You're dealing with having to take another human being's life. You're dealing with all the work things that come along with that. In our case, in Texas, the Texas Rangers come in and they investigate the officer involved shooting. And then you have to go to the grand jury. And then there's the effect that this whole incident has on your family. I'm married, I've got kids. My kids and my wife were bonded with this dog that I just came back with. Everybody's devastated. It affected everybody. And man, I didn't know if I was going to be able to go back and do it. I seriously thought about whether or not I was going to be able to continue in law enforcement or even in canine at that point. And again, it's not right in the moment. It's in the wash of everything that comes after. So that was really one time, if I had to put my finger on it. But there is another that I think is worth mentioning, and that is when I'd promoted but I was working for a leader or a couple of leaders that were really, really difficult to work for. And I found myself losing that fire. I felt like nothing I could do was right. I feel like all the great ideas I brought forward were manipulated and molded into someone else's without, giving credit. I felt like I was carrying such a huge weight and load for those leaders because they were lower performing. And that became exhaustive, trying to do good in your job, but then also prop other people up, believing that their success is the organization's success. And I don't want to see the organization fail. So you see how that immediately becomes one person is trying to carry a whole organization on their back. And that's not sustainable. Again, I put that pressure on myself. I could have sat in my office, done my thing, and not worried about the organization and let, what happened happen. But I'm not wired that way. And I think you and probably a lot of people who are interested in this topic are the same way.
Yeah.
Or high drive, big load carrying people. And often we don't realize we've done too much until it's too late. And then we have to start figuring out how we're going to unpack this stuff and, get to a place of better wellness. Mm-hmm. So I'm fortunate that I've been able to come through those things, mostly because of the help of, my wife and kids, who will call it out, say, hey, something's different here. Like, you're not the same, you're doing too much, you're working too much. And that's really the eye opener that I've had throughout my career. They've always kept me in moderation.
So I just want to rewind a little bit, and thanks for sharing that, because there's two different things there that as you've identified cause burnout majorly in this profession. I've had both as well. I had an incident where I had a female partner of mine. We went to go arrest a guy at a domestic. He went and tried to, was evading from us, went for the front door. She went to go stop him, and he just sucker punched her right across the face. And we caught him, but, I took that as, again, weight of the shoulders. I was supposed to protect her. I care about protecting females higher than anything else, but then she was also my partner on the street as well. So so I had that compounding. And then I had some bad leaders and some stuff that I did later on as well, which didn't allow us to do anything. So I can fully relate with it. I want to jump back to the canine, your canine getting shot and killed, and, having that dilemma on your head of, can I keep doing this? Should I keep doing this? Was it you that identified that you were burning out, or was it somebody that said something?
I knew that something was happening. Nobody said anything to me. I think, that would have been, early to 2010-ish, or like, the 2010s somewhere. And we weren't doing as good of a job of talking about wellness and mental wellness as we should have been, at that time. So nobody said anything to me. It was a lot of the, like, you good? Yeah, I'm good. And that's it. I mean, that was the wellness check. But for me, I knew that something was different. Yeah. And I felt like I had a choice to make. Do I want to continue doing this? Do I want to continue in this profession? Do I want to keep doing this kind of work, or do I want to do something else? And I would always come back to this feeling of, I was put on the planet to do this. I was put on the planet to be a police officer. I'm not good at anything else. I can't work on cars. I'm really awful at, like, home repairs. Like, I'm not good. But I'm a pretty good cop. Yeah. And so when you feel like this is my purpose, you don't want to walk away from it. So it almost forces you to figure out a way to sort through this weightiness and figure out how you're going to get through it. I didn't have as much training and awareness as I probably should have to be able to identify, really put my finger on exactly what was going on, but it was just a feeling. I feel heavy. I feel down. I can't get it off my mind. My heart's racing, like, all of those psychophysical things that are happening. And you just know that you're not normal. And so, okay, let me think through this. What changes can I make? How can how can I come out of this? And, I'm thankful, I'm blessed that I was able to find a way to do that. But how exactly I did that, brother, I have no idea.
That was going to be
No
my
idea.
next question. So, okay.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah. Do you think you've processed it completely 100% even to this day?
Yes, I do. There were some moments where, okay, so I I've never had PTSD. I do think I experienced some PTS after the shooting. Um, but my shooting was really clean, for lack of a better word. I mean, the suspect fired at us, killed my dog. We fired back, killed him. There's a gun in his hand,
Pretty cut and dry.
like it's pretty cut and dry. So there wasn't a lot of baggage that came with that, other than the fact that he was a human, he was somebody's son, he was somebody's, boyfriend. And that we took his life. Like
Mm.
that is weighty. That's the part that I felt post-traumatic stress with. But I mentioned before, I had a really great chief, and he said, "Hey, listen, I know that you're feeling fine and everything's good, but you've got to go see someone. I'm gonna make you go see someone." Um, and he said, "She's a cop. She's a therapist. She's a former cop. She speaks our language,
Yeah.
but you got to go visit with her." And I said, "Yes, sir. No problem. Whatever I got to do to get back." And to be honest with you, I feel like that was a little leading edge at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have
And
been.
so I really am thankful to him that he made me go through that process. Not because it really helped me heal per se, but it showed me from a leadership perspective what it looks like to care for someone
Mm.
post critical incident. And so now, being in that position,
Yeah.
I've been able to execute that same kind of sequence for officers who have worked for me and gone through a critical incident, because I had a great man and a great leader who set the right example for me and put me through that. Um, so um, that's kind of how I
Yeah,
work
no,
through.
I think it's so true, and this is the one thing that I preach, preach in a way to people all the time is that communication side of stuff. By him communicating to you, hey, I get that you're fine, but you need to go talk to somebody. Just the communication side. You and I talked about it, and any of the listeners have been listening for a while know my story that I came back to the U.S., bought a motorcycle, did 8,000 miles on the bike just to refine myself because I'd lost myself so much. And
Yeah,
the number one thing that made the biggest difference was actually talking about what I was going through and what I had experienced. And so just by going to that counselor, going to that psychologist, or going to that person, especially if they're an ex-cop or they speak the lingo and they understand what you've gone through, and they can, not exactly, but they have an idea, you can actually, you'll communicate to them more. And
sure.
so just by getting that weight off the shoulders does it. You said about, taking that guy's life, and it's massive. You also had something that you were emotionally connected to get killed as well. So you
Yeah.
had all that PTSD, whatever it is that you worked through in that. It's awesome to hear that you did that. I wanted to jump forward to the difficult leaders, because I know that this is a huge one that people are talking about right now. I'm running some other stuff. I'm consulting with a few things, and it's a topic that people have brought up a lot: leadership. And we see it. It's a huge buzz thing at the moment. What do you believe helped you get through that time and with that burnout with those difficult leaders?
Um, I think more than anything, it was the hope of what would come from enduring that bad leadership. So almost saying to yourself, I will outlast this person. And once they go, I will make things better. I will be in a better position to make things better. So a little bit of stubbornness probably helped get through those periods. But I'll be honest, prior to or as a result of some bad leaders, is how I even got here to Lake Worth, and that's kind of the fairy tale ending after
Yeah.
that. But just got pushed to the point where the best decision to deal with those bad leaders was to walk away, was to say, I don't have to be here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for the policing profession, for your listeners, and for those young officers to know that if you are in a bad leadership situation and you've determined that sticking it out and being stubborn is not a viable option, walk away. Go find somewhere to work where you are valued, you are appreciated for what you bring to the table. Do not be chained to these awful situations and these bad leadership or these bad leaders. You don't have to be there. Don't subject yourself and your family to these situations. And so,
Was your bad leadership in Lake Worth, or was it somewhere different? You don't have
no,
to say where it was.
no. I've experienced it in every place that I've been. Some places worse than others. I can take it all the way back to the military,
Yeah.
to my first PD, to the SO, or then, here. And in each place, I've worked for someone really great and someone that made me want to run my head through the wall and question life itself, right?
Yeah.
We've all been there, and I've learned something from all of them. Anything from being, demeaned, demoralized, all the way to the I'm threatened, right? So if you're in one of those situations where, maybe you have a high level of education or you're recognized in some way that makes another person feel insecure, and they begin to do things that, because of their insecurity, that impact your work life. Maybe they start to gossip, or they start to not give you opportunities that you used to get because they're afraid, you'll get more recognition than they do, or whatever. And again, when you're a really high drive, high performance person, those things are deeply personal, and it can really throw you into a tailspin. However, the more of those experiences you have, the better you get at identifying it and saying, oh, I've been here, I know what this is.
Yeah.
And it completely changes your mindset. But that only comes with experience.
Yeah.
The first few, you're just like, I can't believe there are even people on the planet who act like this, who would do these things, who are so grossly incompetent or insecure that they would do these things with another person. But as you mature, maybe as you get more education or you go to more training, you really begin to be able to put your finger on these things and call them what they are. And that changes everything.
Yeah.
Once you know that what you're dealing with, and you're better able to not take it personal, you can cope much better with those really bad leaders.
I'm glad that you said that, because it's so true. Once you have awareness, then you can identify it. Then you can be like, okay, cool. What do I want to do with this? Like, do I want to leave, or do I want to just go, that's the way that they are, and okay, cool, I'll just get on with my job. Like, I'll get on with what I'm doing.
And that awareness allows you to take the emotion out of it.
Yes.
Right. Once you can call it what it is, then you can step back and be objective and say, it's this or that.
Yeah.
And you can make that decision with a clear head, and cool emotion, rather than I'm lost, I'm confused, I feel desperate. And that's not a good place to be making decisions.
No, it's so true. And this is why I do these podcasts and that as well, is because what it is it's collapsing that time down. So, you've taken your 18 years of experience, and you haven't told us all of it, but you've collapsed a lot of it down and given new officers or current officers your experience, which they'd have to go through 18 years to figure out doing it. So it's so good, and I appreciate that. Now, did you end up with that bad leadership? Because I know that there's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I've got bad leadership, but I can't move because of family, or I can't do this, or they use all these different excuses or reasons, some valid, some not. Did you end up moving away from that department because of the leadership?
I did. Let me tell you this story. So I was working in the sheriff's office and I was desperate for something new. I had to get out of there. I didn't know if that was going to look like a complete career change or what, but I ended up getting the job here at Lake Worth. And Lake Worth is about an hour from where I was living. And so I was driving 2 hours a day, 5 days a week to and from work. And I have a family who I love deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never at home. I felt like I never saw them. And that was the worst thing for me. Because I do what I do because I love people, but more importantly, I love my family.
Yeah.
And so where we lived was my great grandfather's farm. Okay, so it was three pieces. When he passed away, his three children got a piece. My grandfather's piece was this piece that we built our house on. And down by the front is a pecan tree where my grandfather's ashes were cast when he passed away. Okay. So one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make was the decision to move. But it is also the greatest decision and the one that I have zero regrets about making. Leaving that house and moving opened doors that I would have never thought would open for me, to include becoming one of the youngest police chiefs in the state of Texas. If I would not have moved, they likely would never have considered me for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I didn't live anywhere nearby. And why are we going to have a police chief who's got an hour response time, right? So it was kind of a faith step. It felt like the right thing to do. It was incredibly hard, but big risk, big reward. And in that case for me, it did pay off. So to those who would say, I'm unsure about moving, I'm unsure about stepping away from whatever this situation is that makes me uncomfortable, my encouragement would be, don't be afraid. If you are struggling, if whatever that circumstance is making your life, your family's life, if it's impacting those things in a negative way, then what have you got to lose? Step out, like I'm going to get on a motorcycle and ride, and I have no idea where I'm going, what's going to happen, but it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to step out and do it. And I would encourage people to do the exact same thing.
I love that. I love that you walked us through all that. How'd your family take it?
It was difficult for everyone. I can say that my parents were incredibly supportive. Obviously, there are family ties to that area and that piece of property. So there were some dynamics there, but they were phenomenal. It meant my kids had to change a school. And so it had an impact on everybody, but it has been by and large very positive. I have a son who's autistic, and because of that move and the promotion, we are now able to send him to a school that specializes in teaching autistic kiddos. And that never would have happened for him if it wasn't for our belief that this step was the right thing. And a great leader told me a long time ago that the greatest thing you do in life may not be anything that you do, but who you raise. And when I think about all of my kids, but my son specifically, who is autistic, I think about if we had never made that move and never got you to this school, your life, the world could be completely different if we wouldn't have made that decision. So, it all works out, and I'm confident when I say those doors will open.
Yeah. You look for them, they'll open. You look
Yeah.
for them, they'll open. It's one of those things where you focus, energy flows. So, no, I love that. Only a couple more questions I have for you is one, I'm a huge why guy and purpose guy. And I know you said, you're living in your purpose, policing, and you're like, this is what I've been put on this planet to do. Don't know what else you're gonna do if you had to leave policing. And I think there's a huge amount of cops out there that do it. This is why I run a training that's called "Who Am I If Not?" Because then you really, And so this is where the why comes in. My why is to help people truly see themselves, so that they become the best version of themselves. And that's all obviously applied towards me first, and then towards everybody else. What would you say your why is, JT?
So it's kind of intertwined with our mission here at the police department. Um, and it is derived from a quote from Vince Lombardi, and I'll paraphrase, but basically he says, we're going to chase perfection, knowing full well we'll never attain it. But in our relentless pursuit of perfection, we'll reach excellence. I'm not remotely interested in just being good, is basically what he said. And my why focuses on excellence in service and protection. I don't, police forever have been to serve and protect, to serve and protect, which is great, but I see that elevated. So it's excellence in service and protection. And really it is that, not, not in an irresponsible way, because I know when you are a perfectionist and you're always chasing perfection, that can be irresponsible. I'm not talking about that kind of perfection, but really in a pursuit of trying to be the very best caretaker of the community possible. We reach kind of that excellence level, and it is to serve those who need to be served and to protect in those moments of vulnerability. I don't like to get into the whole guardian versus warrior, because I think a well-rounded police officer is both, and they are emotionally intelligent enough to know which one to apply when. It's not black and white. Nothing about policing is black and white. But it is really about finding a way. My why is really about finding a way every day to serve someone in such a way that they're blown away with excellence, where they walk away from that encounter going, my gosh, that was the nicest guy I've ever talked to, or that was the most profound thing I've ever heard, or, whatever it is, the nicest officer who's ever pulled me over, or, the fastest service I've ever received from the police, or whatever it is that you want to go down. Just every interaction, trying to be as excellent as possible.
No, I love that. I love that. Very similar to, creating the best versions of ourselves, being able to, always have that uplift. How do you apply it to yourself first?
Well, like I said before, my family is everything. And the first thing that I have to do before I can be good for my family, or before I can be good for the police department, is I have to take care of myself. I manage my wellness, my mental health, on and on and on, in the gym.
Yep.
Every morning I get up at 5 o'clock and I go to the gym. And that is the time where I organize my thoughts. I think about the people in my life and how I can serve them and what I can do to make their lives better. And while doing that, I am making my body strong. I'm hopefully giving myself longevity. I hope that I'm setting a good example for my boys and for my coworkers, because, as you know, the policing profession is notoriously unhealthy.
Yep.
So in a way, I'm trying to lead by example there, but really, wellness, the pursuit of excellence, all of that starts with me, with my mind and my body. And so I work on that first. And then I make sure my family is good. My wife is my absolute best friend. We've been married for 15 years. And I owe so much of who I am as a leader and as a person to her. I want to be the best father to my kids. And so I do all of those things. I do this job. I work on myself so that I can be around for as long as possible and give them a wonderful life and give their kids a wonderful life. And then on and on and on. And then
Yeah.
I send them to school and I come to work and I give the same to the people
Yeah.
that I'm blessed to lead here at the police department, um, in the hopes that their lives are as good as possible. My goal for them is to come to work, have everything they need, have all the support they could ever want, and leave at the end of the day and not think about this place until they come back tomorrow. That things are good, that they are stable, that they don't dominate their thoughts when they're away from this place. That's my goal, to help them be well and to manage their stress and to be resilient.
No, I love that. I love that because it's one thing that I you got to train cops a lot in is that self care first, then family, then work. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those hard things. I'm glad that you're able to articulate and you know exactly the different stages and the different things that you do for the different ones. And obviously, you went over it briefly, and I know you have a lot more in there. Uh, One of the last questions that I like to ask, first off, I want to know is, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing it? Maybe they want to, look at coming and joining, your department, or because they're tired, because they, again, that move. Maybe they're like, hey, this sounds a lot more appetizing of a place to work. Um, or they just want to follow you to kind of just get to know you a little bit more, see kind of a little bit more of that. How do they go about doing that? We'll put the links in the
Yes.
description.
So, we're actually hiring right now. So if anybody's interested, we've got a few positions open. For the police department, they can find us at lakeworthtx.org/police. And that'll take you right to the police department site. Um, Professionally, I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. My Twitter for the police department is LWPD_chief. Um, and then personally, I'm on Instagram at J Manoushagian, JManoushagian. And, that's kind of that inside look behind the scenes, behind the curtain. Look at my life. That's where my wife and my kids and my leadership inspiration and all that kind of stuff lives. Um, and so, all of those are really great avenues to reach me.
I love that. I love the fact that you're that you're open on Instagram as well with showing who you are. There's so many cops out there that are like, no, I've got to lock everything down and I can't be shown because of the threats and all this stuff. So when you don't live, you don't live. Um,
Yeah.
so no, I love
There's
that.
something to be said for vulnerability.
Yeah,
Brene Brown talks about that.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
I'm not talking about being irresponsible,
No,
but, yeah,
but I say this
especially when
all
you're a
the,
leader,
I say this
you
all the
got to be.
time to officers that I talk to is you're not being irresponsible by not sitting with your door to the back by sitting with your door to the back. So many cops, I can't sit with my back to the door. It's like you're not being irresponsible. What you're doing is you're relying on your training and you're being present with those that you're with. You're actually being in the moment. You're not being a cop 24 hours a day because that's when the energy gets drained and that's when you burn out.
Yeah.
So no, I love the fact that you have that vulnerable side. The last question I have for you is, what would you say your top tip to self happiness is?
Top tip to self happiness. I think that it would be to find something that you truly enjoy. That can be a task, that can be a person, whatever it is. But you've got to find that thing that gives you joy. Joy breeds happiness.
Mm.
And, for me, it's kind of a combination of things. Like I mentioned, like I enjoy going to the gym and being physically fit because that puts me in the proper mental place to be happy and joyful around my family and my work. Um, so it's kind of all tied together. But for some people, I've got a guy that works for me that woodworking is how he does that. For some, it can be meditation. It can be, religious practice. It can be, any number of things. But you got to find that source of joy.
Mm. No, I love it. I love it. Thank you, JT, for being here. Thank you for taking the time away from work, away from your family. Any last words that you have that you want to add in?
No, just take care of yourself. Take care of the people that are around you. Thank you for having me and for engaging with people really all over the world about this topic that is so important. We can't afford as a profession to lose good people. We got to do everything we can. We need the good.
Yeah.
And so I think we owe it to ourselves and each other to talk about these things and make sure that this profession has the people in it that it needs. So thank you for your work, making sure that happens and those conversations are going. And if I can ever be of help, just let me know. Happy to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, JT. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for being the leader that you are. You can see truly, that you do embody this, that you want to make the cops the best, make this the best place for them and make your city and the world, a much better place by your actions. So I praise you and I say thank you for that. And thanks for being here today. And for all those listening and watching, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this to somebody. Somebody will get something out of this, whether they're a police officer, first responder, or a civilian, as we call everybody else. But share it out there. We want to make an impact. We want to show people, what it's really like, and also help them not burn out. As I said in the very beginning, take one thing away from today. This is going to be up there forever. You can always come back and watch it again and grab another thing. But one thing changed every day is exponential growth by the end of the year. So do that. Thanks again, JT, and thank you everybody for listening. If you are needing help or needing assistance, you can always reach out to us. The links are in the bio for anything that we're running and doing. And also my personal email is down there as well, should you need to reach out or want to reach out for any assistance. But till next time, guys, my motto is always train hard, test easy. That is, train the body and the mind hard. So when you get thrown those tests, they're like water running off the back of a duck. So we'll talk soon, guys. Thanks for listening and appreciate it.